gentlemen, with your kind attention and permission, I have the honor of presenting to you one of the most remarkable men in the world. How remarkable? He's swift.
Hello. My name is Fritz KO, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Fritz KO Vids.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Certainly, they feared what a figure like John Lennon represented.
Anybody who sings about love and harmony and life is dangerous to somebody who's singing about death and killing and subduing.
He was making friends with a lot of people that our government wanted to put in jail.
He was a high-profile figure, so his activities were being monitored.
You think that they are kind of picking on you, John?
Oh, yeah, they picked on me. I'm telling you, when it first started, I was followed in a car, and my phone was tapped, and I think they wanted me to know to scare me, and I was scared, paranoid, you know. And people thought I was crazy then, you know. I mean, they do anyway, but I mean, more so, you know, Lennon. Oh, you big-headed little maniac, right? Who's going to follow you around? Well, what do they want? You know, that's what I'm saying. What do they want? You know, I'm not going to cause them any problem.
It surprised me when I heard that Lennon had been under surveillance, that he'd been wiretapped, just as it did when I heard that Martin Luther King had been. These sort of things that came out of the FBI really caught me as being so unnecessary and so risky, and why?
I can't prove it, you know. I just know there's a lot of repairs going on in the cellar. I know the difference between the phone being normal when I pick it up and when every time I pick it up there's a lot of noises, you know. And I'd open the door and there'd be guys standing on the other side of the street. I'd get in the car and they'd be following me in a car and not hiding, you see. That's why I got a bit paranoid as well. They wanted me to see I was being followed, you know. Suddenly I realized this was serious, you know. They were coming for me one way or the other, you know. I mean, they were harassing me.
At that point, we had evolved to really be friends, you know what I mean? We liked each other. I liked John, you know? This guy was defending something that I thought was necessary and relevant about those protest movement times.
You know, when you put Bobby Seale on the team, that every cop's going to hate you, that every law enforcement person on earth is going to oppose you and characterize everything you do in the context of a true enemy of the state.
He could have stayed in music, stayed away from drugs, kept his mouth shut about what he liked or disliked about the United States. Don't get involved in any politics. Just sing your songs and keep quiet. Everything would have been fine. But now when he starts financing the people that we're trying to put in jail, then that gets kind of serious.
I mean, the notion that the world's largest, most powerful imperial nation, the United States of America, could be seriously threatened by a writer, an intellectual, a singer, a painter is laughable. I mean, it's just a joke. But it indicates at how nervous they were.
The authorities were terrified of him because he just had so much sway. Terrified. So they weren't frightened of people like Mick Jagger. That was just musicians and silly long-haired gits misbehaving, too much money. Trouble with John is there was some intellectual force behind the argument.
It seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. This summer's almost certain standoff will either end in real give and take negotiations or terrible escalation. And for every means we have to escalate, the enemy can match us. And that applies to invasion of the North, the use of nuclear weapons, or the mere commitment of 100 or 200 or 300,000 more American troops to the battle. And with each escalation, the world comes closer to the brink of cosmic disaster.
You see, the war was such a great mistake. We went into Vietnam in order to preserve a democracy which did not exist. The fact of the matter was, South Vietnam was a monarchy, and a rather cruel one. We were fighting for an already lost cause before we ever put the first foot into the country.
Never has so much power been used so ineffectively as in Vietnam. If after all of this time and all of this sacrifice and all of this support, there is still no end in sight, then I say the time has come for the American people to turn to new leadership, not tied to the policies and mistakes of the past.
The Vietnam War divided this country as it had not been divided since the Civil War.
I was with several paralyzed veterans in a room at the Bronx Veterans Hospital on the paraplegic ward. And I remember we were watching the convention.
Mr. Chairman, most delegates to this convention do not know that thousands of young people are being beaten in the streets of Chicago.
Perhaps John Lennon saw the clubs coming down on top of the heads of the peaceful demonstrators. Perhaps John Lennon heard the chants of "the whole world is watching, the whole world is watching." And perhaps John Lennon had tears streaming down his face that night, as I did too.
You have to be more politically aware in a day and age like this. It's almost impossible to close your eyes to it.
And they're afraid of us because we are not only a cultural and political threat, we are a military threat to those generals that are running that war and controlling young kids' minds over there. We're a military threat.
When it gets down to having to use violence, then you play in the system's game. The establishment irritate you, pull your beard and flick your face to make you fight. Because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights.
If it works, it's right.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, it's wrong.
Well, nobody's ever given it a chance before, have they? Nobody's ever given peace a complete chance. Gandhi tried it, Martin Luther King tried it, but they were shot. But nobody's given...
You can't get peace in a king-size divan on floor 802.
We don't expect to. I mean, we're talking mainly to the revolutionaries who think they can get it overnight by breaking down the buildings, you know. They can't get it. Our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane. You know, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it.
From Washington, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The death of a man who sang and played the guitar overshadows the news from Poland, Iran, and Washington tonight. Former Beatle John Lennon, who was 40, was shot and killed last night outside his luxury apartment in New York. The alleged killer is an unemployed security guard and printer who had lived in Hawaii. News of Lennon's death touched off a wave of shock and mourning around the world.
Even sort of changing their own rules to get us, you know, just because we're peaceniks, really.
We don't know both your anti-war action and not your marijuana conviction is.
Well, I mean, let's say that a few friends of ours in the pop business have exactly the same conviction as me and are allowed to come and go as free as they like. They just don't happen to have the same point of view as me, or they don't state it.
Will you now stop speaking out against the war because of this?
No, nothing will stop me, and whether I'm here or wherever I may be, I'll always have the same feelings and say what I feel, you know.
We loved him for who he was and who he was to become during that period. And he marched with us, he walked with us. He went up against this powerful government that was terribly wrong, that had misled us into a deeply immoral war. He did not back down.